Hi everyone. Last week someone asked me how I style my contact form on my website, and so what I'm going to do, I'm just going to take you through how to style forms properly. Now there are quite a few tutorials on the web, so I'm pretty much just regurgitating what they say, but I'm going to take you through it because someone requested it. I'm also going to show you a really cool gradient generator I found for CSS3. It covers, it's part of CSS3. There's quite a few that are out there already, but this is the best I've found so far. It's the most akin to Photoshop, and it supports opacity, etc., etc. So I'll take you through that in a second. But first things first, this is my contact form. This is the end result. By default, what I've got here, I'll show you the HTML, what the HTML looks like, which is just here. So really simple HTML. We've got a body with a contact div, no form or names or anything because it's just a quick test. Two inputs, which is text fields, and then another input after that, which is a button with the value of contact me, which of course value means that it will show up, which is the text that will show up on the button, as you can see. By default, they're supposed to look like this. Very boring. Kind of crappy. So obviously we want to style this to look much better, to put on our website. So what I'm aiming for is this. What I'll do is I'll go through the CSS and take you through exactly how I did it. Now, the real power here, the real key to how this works is the CSS selectors here. So these two are just defining what my background looks like. You can see I've got body margin, background color, image position. Contact, I'm just centering a contact div with the width of 400 pixels and bringing it down 200 pixels from the top, just so that I've got a box to put my contact form in. But the real power here is the selectors just there. So input is an HTML selector, so it's not selecting a div by ID. It's not selecting by class either, which would be the little full stop or period if you're American. It's an HTML selector. So anything with the HTML of input, you can see just here, anything that has input or is an input will have the properties that we define afterwards in this CSS class, in this CSS selector. So everything with input, with the input HTML, is positioned relatively, has the margin of the bottom, a margin at the bottom of 10 pixels, and these two is enough, or should be enough, to make the items stack on top of each other, all right, and have the 10 pixels is the little gap in between there. To be fair, this CSS, if you're relatively comfortable with CSS anyway, you should know all this. This is just explaining to you. So across the board, all inputs I've set to position relative, margin, bottom of 10 pixels, font size 16 pixels, padding. Oh, actually, I need to take that out. Sorry, that's a little bit of a mistake. I've got padding set to none and then padding set to 5 pixels. I was just playing around with what padding would affect what, but I'll just take that out for you. There we go. So padding set to 5 pixels, border none. I've also set border radius to 5 pixels, which means that we've got a little rounded corner here on all the elements, which is a 5 pixel radius. Now if I set that up to sort of a 10 pixel radius, so let's go and pop that up to 10. Again, CSS users should be comfortable with this. It then rounds it even more. In fact, that's not too bad. We'll leave it at that actually. And font family to Helvetica. Now this selector just here, this is really cool. So not only can we choose an input, but we can also choose which inputs have the type of either text or button or whatever other types of inputs that you can you create in your HTML. So you can see that we've got two inputs which are of the type text, and then one input which is of the type button. Now, of course, we want them to look different. We want our text boxes to have the light gradient, which makes it look indented, and then the button to have the darker gradient, which makes it look as if it's convex, and then we on rollover want that to change concave. So you can see my input type text has a width of 390. Actually, I'll explain why they've got two different widths. We've got input type text, which is 390, and input type button, which is 400. For some reason, padding to the left and right does not work on buttons. It will only work on text boxes. Okay, so if I defined padding of 5 pixels on the button, it would make absolutely no difference whatsoever to it. It would not change the size. So for that case, if I set both text and button to both be 400 pixels wide, you'd find the text boxes came out a bit wider because of the padding. So for that reason, I have to set the input text to be 390 and the input button to be 400. I've also put a little cursor changer on button so that it looks like it's a hyperlink, or it's something you can click. Otherwise it just turns out to be the normal pointer, and I don't particularly like that. So input type text, width 390, and with all this chunk here, this is all for the gradient, which I'll show you in a second. So that, and that, they are all gradient. Now, I know it's a lot of CSS, but it's a copy and paste, so it should be pretty easy. But again, it is the best gradient creator I've found so far. It's not the most stripped down, so there is a lot of CSS there compared to some other gradients that other gradient makers I've seen. But this one is the best, got the most features. So anyway, stop rambling. Input type button, width 400, cursor pointer, as I explained. I've also put a little drop shadow on here, just a 5 pixel wide drop shadow, just to make it look like it's popping off the page a little bit more, because I prefer my buttons to look like they're popping out. And then on the hover, I've just put an input type button, hover, and then set the gradient to be a concave rather than convex. So that gradient creator, say I wanted this button to be a yellow button or an orange button. So this is the gradient I was making earlier. There's a load of presets you can choose here. In fact, I will choose one of these presets. Let's go and pick something like that one. Yeah, that one's quite a nice one. So I'll choose that preset just there. And you can see, if anyone's used Photoshop before, this is quite similar to Photoshop. So you've got your opacity you can change here. You've also got all these tabs that you can pop on or pop off. You can create new ones by clicking here and then change the opacity of those particular tabs. Then you've got your color selector. If you go and click on one of these tabs, double click on one of those tabs, sorry, you've got a color picker just here that you can go and change. But we're happy with these, so let's copy this CSS just here, copy, pop across, and then paste it in there. Tab that across a little bit, anal. Then let's give that a little refresh, and there you can see our button has changed. Again, the rollover I did set to be the convex one, but we can go and change that in a second. I prefer that to be a little bit darker, so I will go and change that. So, in fact, let's forget the whole reflection thing. Let's just deal with. Actually, if we, yeah, you can click and then drag away like you can in Photoshop with the tabs. Let's go and change that color to a darker sort of orangey. That's good. So that's the sort of colour we're looking at. Copy that, paste it in again, and what we'll do is we'll just swap these tabs around for the convex one. So dark one over there, light one over there. Ooh, just there. Copy that, and then paste it in there. And hopefully that will change. Oh, balls, sorry. I pressed copy instead of paste. Paste that in there. Give that a little refresh, and boom. much better button. So hopefully that shed a bit more light on how to style a contact form. I'll take you over the CSS that I would have used for Digital Nebula. Christ, that is loading slow. That's not good. It's the internet here. I'm at a hotel and it's got really slow internet. So now the CSS for this is just going to be a 1 pixel border, which is like a light grey border. And then the background color I set to, background image I set to a 1 pixel repetition of an opaque PNG, which obviously means you can see through it slightly. And that's pretty much it for that. And if you set it to be input, set the CSS to be input, it will change across the board, change the look of the buttons across the board, which is kind of cool. But yeah, hopefully that shed a bit more light onto contact forms, how to style them. Any questions, give me a PM or give me a reply. Don't forget to subscribe. I've had loads of subscribers, which is great. Any more requests, please do send them through. I'll try my hardest to get that video made. Thanks. See you later.